Today we're joined by the extraordinary alto saxophonist Mike DiRubbo, whose deep, soulful sound has captivated jazz audiences for nearly 3 decades. A disciple of Jackie McLean, Mike's artistry is rooted in bebop tradition elevated by the post-Coltrane modal approach. With 10 albums as a leader, including his latest release, Inner Light, Mike continues to redefine jazz with his poetic tone and dynamic compositions. From leading bands to teaching at Litchfield Jazz Camp and Stanford Jazz Workshop, Mike is a true saxophone virtuoso and educator. So join us as we explore his remarkable journey and contributions to modern jazz. So, Mike, good to see you.
Good to see you too, Abe. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Mike, the first thing I thought would be a great question to start would be is talking how does someone go about finding their own voice on the instrument? You've been on the scene for 3 decades, as I had mentioned. You've written so many compositions. You know so many standards. So, how do you take it from where it goes imitating to being yourself on the horn? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. I think it's an ongoing process. Although, when I listen back to the first recording I did, I was only 24 back in 94. It's already been 30 years. It's crazy. That's the album that eventually came out as From the Inside Out with my great buddy Steve Davis in the front line with me and Nat Reeves, Carl Allen, and Bruce Barth on that. But I cringe when I hear parts of what I play something like that that's 30 years old. But at the same time, there's something that's already in place even when you're that young. Um, it's kind of like your fingerprint in a way. So, um, I mean, to really work this is something that you got to be constantly working on, but I think that writing your own music is a great way to get your own sound, and that's something that Jackie McLean kind of put on me when I feel like I wasn't even ready for that, maybe when I was like 20 years old or something. Hey, Mike, you should start writing your own music. And here I am thinking like, shit, I'm still trying to figure out how to play the blues, in 4 or 5 keys, let alone 12 keys and all this other stuff we have to learn. But hopefully that gives you a little idea. If you want me to go deeper on that, let me know.
No, so
Yeah.
let me ask you this. I mean, you said he told you to start writing music and you were still learning how to play in all 12 keys.
Yeah.
Is that the first step a jazz musician should take, just writing their own blues head or something like that?
I don't know. Everyone is different, so I can't say like my particular, coming up in the music was a lot different than even a lot of the students that I've had over the years. I feel like young people have way more knowledge than I did at that age. Now, whether or not that pans out to work out in the end, I don't know because everyone has their own path. And I'm not going to say that I would change anything of how I came about it. But just to give you a little background, I didn't even know who John Coltrane was until I got to college. I'm growing up kind of in this vacuum environment in New Haven, Connecticut. Um, Picked up the clarinet in when I was 9 years old. So this is like the late 70s because I was nine in 79 and born in 1970. So late 70s, early 80s, all the music that you would hear on the radio at that time. Um, Parents weren't musicians, but my dad loved the sound of the saxophone. And I really wanted to play the saxophone, but back then they had you start on clarinet, which is cool. In hindsight, I think it was kind of a good thing. Um, and then my dad got me an alto when I was 12, which is interesting because the sound that he really loved was a tenor. I always remember that. So Um, and then it was just like playing on my own. I had lessons one summer with a guy in New Haven. His name is Danny Cipriani. I don't know what he's doing right now, but he was more, I mean, he played all kinds of things, but I learned about him through the local music store, and the guy recommended, uh, I think my band director in high school said, you should take some private lessons. My dad went with me to the local music shop, and this guy was like, yeah, check this guy out. So we did, I don't know, literally about a month or two. And I remember him telling my dad eventually, like, yeah, there's nothing else I can show him now, which in hindsight, I'm like, that can't be true, man, because I still have this notebook of things he gave me, and like, I don't know if I really understood all that stuff at the time, but um, and then it was only Jackie McLean that was my other real teacher, and then we also had to take some classical lessons at the University of Hartford. So I got to study with Ken Rednowski, who's a great classical teacher. I think he still teaches up
Well,
at
I think what you're getting at is that you didn't grow up in a musical environment.
yeah.
But it's funny you said like I never knew who John Coltrane was growing up, that any stuff like that. You start on the clarinet, you went to the local music store. This is just these the stuff that makes you who you are today, and everyone has their own path in a
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
But to now, when you've been doing it for so many decades and look back, I think your younger self would certainly be proud of where you are today. You think so?
I mean, I guess so. Yeah. I mean, I just was always fascinated with the instrument, the saxophone, loved it. And I think if you play the saxophone, it lends itself that you're probably going to be a jazz musician if you're not, really in love with classical and that sound and being, so I just wanted to be the best musician I could be. So to me back then it was like, yeah, you need to go to school and study jazz. I didn't know who Jackie McLean was until I met him, man. And it was like kind of like dumb luck. I mean, New Haven to Hartford is like 30 minutes or something. It's really not that far, but back then when I was young, it could have been an entire different universe,
Yeah,
you know,
you
because
were probably going to Louis' lunch getting those burgers at the
well,
fake.
it was more modern beats because I grew up. Now that became like a huge New Haven pizza spot, but
Yeah.
it was a local place when I was a kid. Um, but yeah, but what a blessing, man, that I got to do that audition at the University of Hartford and then eventually pick that school to go, and then kind of the rest is history at that point,
No, the
man.
Hart School is a great school. I auditioned there. It was a lovely faculty. I remember to this day. This is going back for me about 20 or so years. But when you are going to school in Connecticut and you're saying that Hartford feels like another world,
Yeah.
does New York feel like, oh, like do you even feel more intimidating at that point?
Uh, I don't know because being from New Haven, like you kind of do gravitate to New York a little bit more. There's the Metro North right there. So I had been to New York a handful of times at least as a teenager and stuff, and always in my mind, even though I didn't understand what the jazz scene was, but I always knew that New York was going to be like I have to move to New York, even before I I wanted to be a jazz musician. There was something about the pull of the draw of New York. So yeah, going to Hartford, it happened less, but obviously I went to school there, and then I ended up living there for a little while after school. That's, at that point I had met Steve Davis. He was back living there after he had played in the city with Art Blakey and his band, and then he was back teaching actually. And then we had a little group together that he called the Explorers Quintet. So we had a steady gig in Hartford, and that kind of kept me around. And I got to meet a bunch of cats from New York through Steve that eventually would start hiring me in New York at uh, what Smoke used to be known as, which was called Augie's back in the day. You probably remember,
Are
right?
you're referring to like, the people from who were in like the One for All band, like.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, because Joe Farnsworth had a weekend there steady, and then I think on Thursday nights it was Jim Rotundi for a long time, and Joe's brother, um, James, that was an incredible baritone saxophone players, would do that a lot.
He has a brother James too, because I know he has a brother John also. I mean,
Well, James unfortunately passed
oh, okay. Okay.
in 98. Yeah, but he played with Ray Charles's band and I mean he was just a kind of an underrated uh bebop baritone player. Really,
Wow.
really great, man. So we used to do that a lot on Thursdays, but Joe was probably he was calling me while I was still living in New Haven, so like in the mid 90s to come and play Augies. And I would, drive down, sometimes crash there, but most of the time just drive back up because it was at 5 o'clock in the morning or 4 in the morning. It only takes you about an hour and 15 minutes to get to New Haven. So yeah, I know I covered a lot of things in
No,
that
it's all great, but you
yeah.
talked about how you were doing these things like going back at 5 in the morning and stuff, going back and forth from, it is state to state at the end of the day. I
Yeah,
can I can recall like when I was in Boston going to college, me and my friend, we would take the bus to New York. We would get back at like, we would just go to the jam sessions and just to see what it was like.
yeah.
And the scene, I personally, I have some feelings that the scene has definitely changed a little bit since the pandemic. I'm not sure how you feel about that. Obviously, there are still some great places to play, but
Yeah.
well, do you feel that the scene has changed in any way, shape, or form, or do you still feel like it's always kind of been the same?
To me, New York changed post 9/11 because I kind of remember, obviously was here before then, and even as a kid growing up, I mean, there's a lot of things along the way that changed New York, all the things that Giuliani did to kind of change Times Square. I mean, for better or worse in some ways. It became more of like a Disneyland or whatever, Times Square. I
It used
just
to be really
remember.
dangerous, right?
I don't know if it's dangerous, but it had more of an edge to it, and yeah. And then, post 9/11, I don't know, everybody was just like kind of on edge. I feel like the music changed a little bit. This is around the time that Nora Jones became really big. At that time, it's like people really wanted something softer or something. Um, Things started places. I don't, probably has nothing to do with 9/11, but eventually places would close earlier. Like sets started like happening earlier. Because back in the 90s when we were playing at Augie's, that gig didn't start till 10 o'clock. And we would play until almost 4 o'clock until closing, So, and people were smoking in clubs. I mean, I'd take my saxophone out the next day and it would reek of cigarettes, man. You don't even realize you're breathing all this stuff in. I mean, now it's like, what is it, like 20 years later now that you can't smoke in clubs? And so all these little changes and, places close, but there's always new little places that crop up, especially in New York. It's like, uh, that's what I love about being here. It really is the jazz capital of the world. And, but yeah, things like that has changed. During the pandemic, I actually was in Florida for about a year and a half.
I did know that. I did my due diligence. I listened to your
Oh, you
interview with
did?
Joe Dominio, and I listened. You talked about
Oh,
that a
okay,
little bit.
cool. That's the Kansas City podcast, that
Yeah,
one.
he's
Yeah,
a
yeah.
really great guy.
He is a great guy, yes. And so yeah, that happened and now I'm back here and so I don't know what it was like right in the heart of the pandemic, but I know, no one was really doing anything. Everybody was on Zoom and this and that. And even Smalls cats were playing there without audiences, right? And broadcasting it. But I live down here in the West Village, so I'm always walking the small. Last night I played at Cellar Dog, which is fun.
With Brian Charette, right?
Brian Charette, Joe Strasser. Um, they actually have a club in Philadelphia now, Cellar
Hmm.
Dog in Philly. So something is working with jazz, like to open up a brand new club in Philadelphia. I mean, Lord knows there's enough jazz musicians out there, right?
Yeah, you know, wouldn't it be amazing if there were as many jazz clubs as there are? Let's not say McDonald's, there'd be too many, but
Yeah.
yeah, call it like Applebee's or something. Imagine that.
I mean, you think about these things over the years, but at the end of the day, I think it's like what makes this special is that you kind of have to be in the know to be a jazz fan. I think if it was that popular, I'm not sure it would be as special as it is. You know what I mean?
It's almost like its own secret world in a sense. It's like the
A
underground.
bit, a little bit. And I watch in some of my free time. One of my guilty pleasures is to watch these shows where guys build cars and stuff. I don't know why it fascinates me, man. Maybe in another life I'd be like a
A
metal worker
mechanic.
or something. Yeah. But these guys that fabricate stuff from metal and they mold it and turn it into all this stuff. But one of the things I hear them say, if it was easy, everybody would do it, and then it wouldn't be that cool. Just kind of true about jazz in a way,
Oh,
right?
this is not an easy life. I mean,
No,
and
no,
you've been in it. You're you're a little older than me. It's like been at it, and it's not easy on any level. I think
no.
anyone who says it's easy is lying,
Hmm.
um, or maybe they just have a lot more luck or something. But a lot of people go to school. They think they get the degree in jazz. They learned, you know, their 75 standards, and now the door opens up and you leave the school and now you should have a career as a jazz musician. There's a lot of mystery about this life, a huge misconception out there. um
Yeah.
what do you think the biggest misconception um out there is, either for young jazz musicians or for the outside looking in? Anything you kind of feel strongly about?
Um, Misconceptions. I mean, I don't know if this if this pertains to this day and age, but like there was a time period where people thought, all jazz musicians were on drugs of some sort and or substances and all this, which is definitely not true. I mean, most of us are going to the gym more often than we are doing drugs or things
Yeah,
like this. I mean,
definitely.
because, if there's one thing that you should learn as you go along is just kind of see what's happening around you. Um, I'm of the age to have, you know, been alive when Art Blakey was still here and Miles Davis was still around. I got to be around Jackie McLean. And of course, I played with Harold Mayburn, and George Coleman is still alive, and played with Cecil Payne and all these people. And Curtis Fuller, and you just, one thing you realize right away is like, wait a minute, these guys are, it's not the way you grew up thinking about stars. Like, I'm not going to, I don't know, I'm not going to meet Mick Jagger or something right now. These cats are right there. The first time I met Elvin Jones at the Blue Note, couldn't believe it. He's right there, grabbed me, shook my hand, and you don't have that kind of access to pop stars in that way. So my point is I'm trying to say we're around these people, and some of them lived a certain way, and you kind of know, like, wait a minute, I kind of probably not going to be around that long if I like live my life this particular way. And so we have plenty of examples to go by. I mean, all our heroes
We
didn't
lost
make
so
it
many
to our
people.
age.
Yeah,
Yeah. And then the pandemic and everything else. And it's just, yeah, there's that misconception.
well, Mike, the reason I want to ask you this is because, from the outside looking in, if
Mhm.
someone, you have a name, people know the name Mike DiRubbo on an international level as far
Are
as
you,
as an
you sure
alto.
about that? You sure?
I think so.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I mean, I mean, I'm not, I'm telling you the truth, and
Okay.
I even even though we haven't worked together, I mean, I'm just you people know
Mhm.
that name, and from the outside looking in, people say like there could be like a young alto saxophone player, 16 years old. He says, "Oh, I want to be like Mike DiRubbo."
Mm.
But what is Mike DiRubbo still? Are there any venues or festivals that you still want to play at? Anything like that?
Oh
Would you like
yeah,
to Would you like to work with some people that you really feel you could have a musical connection to that you haven't just crossed paths with anything like that?
yeah, for sure. I mean, I got a long list like that. I mean, most of my students over the years have played places I haven't even played yet.
Your
And
students have played places you haven't played.
yeah, I mean, people that I've, at least had one or two lessons with along the way, but yeah, I mean, I still have a dream to someday lead a group at the Vanguard. I would, that's a dream of mine. I play in so many bands that just sound so great, and we're just like, damn, how come
Did
this
you
we
ever
should
play
be
have you played the Vanguard before as a sideman?
just sitting in. I
Sitting in.
never, yeah, never have as a sideman. See, and I don't recommend this to most saxophone players, but I chose a very different path. Um, I don't play in big bands. Um, not a flute player. I told you I started on the clarinet, but that thing sits on the shelf, to be honest with you. I really got focused on the
You're
saxophone
not a
and
multi-instrumentalist. You are an alto saxophone player, is what
well, I mean, I play piano, I play some guitar. I play the soprano quite a bit, although I don't get a lot of calls for they don't get a lot of calls for soprano. I do play some tenor too. I have one, but I'm an alto player, and kind of like a band leader. When you're an alto player, you pretty much have to be a band leader if you're not playing in big bands. So, um, that's a hard path, man, but it's kind of that's what I want to do as an artist. I never wanted to play music to just be a working musician. Like to say, I could play in a club day band and make $1,000 a weekend or something like that. I don't know. One of the first paying gigs I ever had, I was probably 16 and played in a wedding band. And that continued like through high school into my first year of college. And then I gave it up because I'm like, I really have to focus on all this stuff. I felt like I was like trying to catch up a little bit with all the jazz that I needed to know.
No, I understand.
So
You're saying that you want to lead your own band. You just want to have more of a and that's totally, that's a reasonable thing to say, I think. And
yeah, I mean that was my path, and then to play with great people as a sideman, like I do with Steve Davis or whoever it is, Mario Pavone over the years when he was alive, and different people, all great, all different kinds of great jazz musicians. And there's a lot of people on the list of my list that I would still love to play with that I haven't, or
can you
maybe make a
name
record.
them who's like a really great,
Oh,
piano player that you would like to work with?
oh man, I mean, there's so many of them, man. I mean, I hate to single out anyone, but someone like Jeff Keezer would be fantastic. Rini Rosnes, or man, I did get to play with Brad Meldell back in the day. We made like a kind of a demo recording for Steve Davis. This was back
Funny
when
you
Steve.
mentioned Jeff Keezer. I'm going to be talking to him in a couple of weeks, I think. So
Oh, really? Cool.
yeah, he's incredible.
No, he is, yeah. And I've known him for years, and we've had a chance to play a little bit together over the years, I'm sure. But another person on my list is Brian Blade, because we have the exact same birthday, man. July 25th, 1970.
Are you a
And
Cancer?
no, it's a Leo,
Oh, I'm
actually.
17, July 17. You're a
Oh,
Leo.
cool. Yeah. I know a lot of cancers in my life, though. Very close with a lot of cancers. Yeah. Um, my first record, I had reached out to him from the inside out, but he was still living in New Orleans at that
Brian
time.
Bladis?
He was,
Oh, he
yeah,
was.
back
Okay.
then. And I think that was just when Josh Redman was kind of really hitting it big at that point, and they were working a lot. He was in his band, and he couldn't make that, but that's on my list of yeah, seeing how I could get that to happen.
Have you ever like, I mean, you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, but like, you're saying you want to work with Brian Blade. Have you ever like openly just like wrote him an email saying, "Hey, I'd like to play with you," or anything like that? I mean, because
Oh
sometimes.
no, no, no. I'm thinking more like if I could get a project together and get him on a record date or
Oh, okay,
something.
okay, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. I mean, his band's, he's had his band for quite a while with the same
The
personnel, I
Fellowship
believe.
Band.
Yeah, yeah, and he has his own vibe. It's interesting, a lot of drummers that are leaders and have their own kind of music as well, you know. Um,
But you play with Melda, you were saying a little
I
bit.
mean that yeah, I mean we have, over the years because he grew up in Connecticut as well, but I mean that's always a great thing to play with that guy. He just adds so much to the music, you know. Um, man, I mean, literally, you name anyone. I mean, I'd love to make a record still with like Kenny Barron and Ron Carter. I did get to play with Al Foster. We did a bunch of tours together,
Oh,
like
that's
around
amazing.
around 2017. I mean, I didn't get to record with him. That would have been awesome. Um, but yeah, I mean, I can't even think right now of all the different people,
No, it's
but
it's just it's just interesting to say because like we're like I had said before, like people know your name on that international level and stuff, and here you are, you're pushing forward still and saying I'd like to work with these people, and it's
oh yeah, man.
and
Yeah,
I love hearing that because you almost the way you're speaking about it just comes from this honest place, like you love the music so much, you respect these musicians, and yeah, you put them on that level, like hey, I would love to work with you, I respect your artistry, and to hear you just talk about these, some of these people who I love hearing about it.
yeah.
Let me, you had also mentioned that you taught a bunch of students in the past. I think mentorship is a um something that people need to remember, like people need to have those mentors that help them out. What's something you might tell a student who you see has potential to really do something with the music that you would like them to know that's a little bit unconventional musically, or maybe just about the art? What should they know, you think? They
Well,
want to make a career out of it.
I mean, I try to be frank with students and just let them know what the life entails, so like to be sure that that this is coming from their heart and they really want to do it because there's gonna be a lot of obstacles along the way.
The
Um,
obstacles don't end.
no, no, but the one thing as I get older, I'm learning that a lot of obstacles are self-induced. You know what I mean? You know, one of the things that I've thought about more recently is like, man, I almost want to not even for the reason to make money, but like I thought it would be cool to have like one-on-one with musicians, no matter what level there are, and then just kind of seeing the advice that I could give them, but more from a mental aspect of it. Like, you know what I mean? Because I think a lot of people struggle with that, man.
Yeah,
And
I think we're if there's one thing I've learned, throughout doing, I mean, I just started this series about a month ago, but actually you're number 50, believe it or not. So
oh,
that's good.
cool.
That's kind of cool. It's a special, it's a milestone and everything.
Oh, great.
And that everyone has their own, psychology that they grew up with.
Hmm.
And no matter who you get, everyone is just going to look at this differently, and everyone has something to tell, that just the way they might look at something, that if you molded these things all together, oh man, that person would be
Mm.
like have it all, just to get
Yeah.
everything to, but I like that idea. You should do that, just my
But really, you have to embrace who you are
yeah.
and try to figure out how to get that out on the horn. the one thing I realize more and more as I continue to do this is that the hardest thing to really do and to play in this music, and speaking on a musical level, is still to play standards, man, and to make them engaging for people.
Amen.
Uh, I mean, because like if I we all can play our own music. It's hard for people to judge your own music, right? If it's your music, what there's nothing. Not that comparing is a good thing anyways, but there's nothing really to compare it to. It's like, oh, yeah, that sounded great. And I know myself when I get to play on my own music, it's super comfortable and the changes. And then, but here comes the standard, and it's like, oh shit,
I know you're preaching to the choir. I could never get sick of playing standards, to be honest with you.
no, but
That's the
it's
way my
very
brain is,
hard,
you know.
man.
It is.
It's really hard to like, and you understand this the older you get, it's just, I mean, it's something that but people get things at different times in their life. There are unusual people that come along and they're 20 years old and they just kind of have this old soul and can play standards in a particular way and love that music. But I mean, to understand the lyrics and I mean, these beautiful tunes that have been written about every aspect of what it's like to be in love with someone, right? When you think about the words, I'm just looking at the words to Stardust yesterday and thinking about, holy cow, man, like amazing time of US history, if you want to say that, when these songs were being written, man. I mean, it's just and they're so timeless. Um, so there's always that, right? We have if we could have 4 lifetimes to try to learn these things. So the point, if I'm going to put this in a learning aspect for anyone younger that might be listening to this, is you always can go back to these standards and glean some serious knowledge from them, man.
You can
Uh,
always learn new ones because there's
oh
some.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And don't rely on the I reel always and this and that. It's cool to have that reference, but really, get your ears together to be able to learn these things. I can't tell you how many original tunes that I had to learn on the bandstand, like a lot of the songs that I would, Harold Mabern songs, for instance, like uh, we'd be playing them at Smoke, and I hadn't heard them before, but you just kind of got to get it together. And
No, Mike, this has been great. I want to thank you so much for doing this,
cool.
and everyone, who's listening. Where can we find you on? Where's your Instagram? That sort of thing. Can we find you on
It's
Instagram?
just my name, Mike DiRubbo.
Easy to find.
I have somebody helping me with that, so I get the content and he cuts it up and does it. Hopefully we can keep it going for a little while. I've been doing some interviews as
I
well.
did know that. Yes, yeah. I saw.
Yeah. So yeah, Mike DiRubbo. I have my website is my name as well, DIRUBBO. Even though most people want to say DiRubio, it is DiRubbo.
Rubio, like the politician.
Oh yeah, well, I don't. It just kind of falls off the tongue easily for people. I don't know, but anyway, that's another thing. I should have changed my name years ago. Maybe it would have been easier on everyone.
No, thanks so much, Mike. I appreciate it.
Okay, well, cool.